Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching third part of What If Naruto Became a Demon Dragon Rider. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Almost right away, a feeling of wanting to kill spread through the council chambers. Kushina just stood there, her eyes filled with rage. Tsunade just sat there with her mouth open. She said, "KK Kushina?" in a whisper. Kushina turned, looking at Tsunade. She said, "Hello, Tsunade-san," but her voice had a slight edge to it. She was being sarcastic when she said, "It's so nice to see you after 20 years. Tsunade started to cry. She said, "Kushina, please, let me explain." "Explain? Explain what?" "Explain how you became like a mother to me after I lost my home. Explain how you then left me in Minato. Explain how when I begged you to come back and be the one to deliver my baby, you refused because you didn't want to have bad memories." She slammed her hands down on the desk in front of Tsunade. The Hokage cringed and moved back a bit as Homura stood up. "Now look, Uzumaki-san. Even though we can't believe you're still alive, you can't just." The katana blade aimed at his throat stopped him. "Shut up. After what you did to my son, you have no right to talk to me like you are in charge." Hiashi was about to have a heart attack, and Sume was holding on to the armrests. At the same time, one member of the council was speechless. "How did she get there? I thought I was done with her. She shouldn't be here or even alive." Shibi spoke up. "Uzumaki-san, have you heard what happened to your son?" Kushina looked back at him. "How could I not? Every country on this continent knows that this village treated my son, the hero of Konoha, worse than any criminal. Some of the villagers are almost happy that he is dead right now." As Kushina came up behind Sume, the council cringed. You were one of my best friends. We swore that no matter what, we'd always look out for each other's kids. Where were you when my son was kicked out of the orphanage, beaten for no reason, and left to starve to death on the streets?" Sume's tears came out. "K. Kushina-chan. I didn't know. Sarutobi didn't say who he was, and it shouldn't have made a damn bit of difference. Think, Sume. Think, and stop acting like a hot-headed bimbo. How many people in this village have blonde hair? Minato and the Yamanaka. And the Yamanaka didn't have any kids born on October 10th, did they?" she yelled. Sume started crying, and Kushina then went up to Hiashi. "And you? I don't want to believe half of the rumors I've heard about your clan. Tell me, were you just trying to get power when you befriended Minato? Did it make you happy to stab him in the back by having your clan attack his son?" Hiashi couldn't look at her, so he kept his head down. Kushina just nodded. She looked at the people and said, "That's what I thought. You all make me sick. I saw you all trying to get power before Minato became Hokage. You were trying to tell how things are run in a shinobi village. You were acting like you had the power to command the ninja of this village. Minato stopped you all, but you got back at him, didn't you? You got your revenge for power lost by taking it back after he died and beating his son for no reason." She turned around to see everyone again. 18 years ago, after I gave birth to Naruto, I was knocked out, kidnapped, and sold into slavery. I've spent 18 years as a slave to high-ranking Iwa generals and officials. I've spent 18 years begging Minato and Naruto for forgiveness because I couldn't be there to raise my son. I thought he was being taken care of well, but I guess I was wrong." Before someone from the crowd spoke up, there was silence. "If what you said was true, how did you meet the demon dragon rider?" Oni spoke up at last. "I saved her when I destroyed the Iwa fortress Rutake. I knew who she was from an old Iwa bingo book and told her what I knew about her son. As we traveled together, she learned more and more about him." Danzo stood up. He said, "But she was a registered shinobi of Konoha. After she was saved, she should have gone back to Konoha right away. Since she didn't, she should be tried for treason and not doing her job." Before Tsunade could answer, Oni put up a hand. "That wouldn't be a good idea, Danzo-san. Kushina-san here is a valuable ally. She has helped me a lot, and she is the one who convinced me to come here and even think about working for this village. So if you were to arrest her and try her for those minor crimes you just mentioned, I would get upset. If I got upset, I would get angry. If I got angry, my dragon would get angry. If we both got angry, we..." Danzo slowly sat down, and Oni nodded. "Good. Now that the contract is signed and everything is settled, will that be all, Hokage-sama? Tsunade just blinked a few times and then shook her head as if to clear her mind. Why yes. One last thing. Does this mean you'll be staying at the Namikaze home? Kushina gave her a look. She said it with a cold tone, unless the council took it away to try to steal my husband's work. When Kushina turned around and went to the doors, Oni followed her. The council members jumped. Kushina turned around when they stopped. Just so you all know, I'm not here to take over my husband's position and try to fix any clans. I'm here to take what is rightfully mine and what should have been my son's. Whether or not I stay depends on how you all act and what Oni decides. With that, she and Oni left. Shikaku was the first person to speak up after a few minutes of silence. He asked, "We really screwed up, didn't we?" Tsunade spoke slowly and didn't even look up from the table in front of her. "We did. In more ways than we can count." Naruto smiled as he talked to Anixia outside the tower. "We're leaving. When we get to my family's house, I'll show you a picture, and you can come with us. It's supposed to be a big forest full of animals." Anixia answered right away. "I'm excited." Naruto laughed to himself as Kushina put her mask back on and led the way to the Namikaze home. When your father's clan was still a clan, it owned a large but still modest estate in the southern part of Konoha. It was close to some of the more heavily forested training grounds, which the Namikaze liked because they did some of their best thinking in nature. As their numbers dwindled, the Namikaze started tearing down or changing parts of the mansion for other uses. There is a lovely garden, where a training ground used to be. She went to the gate and cut the palm of her hand open with a knife. Then she put it on the gate. She sent her chakra through the gate, and a seal showed up. It was a deep red color at first, then turned green, and finally went black. As it did, they heard the sounds of gears turning. Slowly, the gate opened. The Namikaze were very good with seals. In fact, Minato's grandfather was the one who taught Jiraiya the basics of seals when he was a little boy. This seal is a blood chakra locking seal. All members of the clan, and future members, channeled their chakra and blood into the master security seal inside the estate. By doing this, you can access the security seals placed around and in the estate. As they went in, Naruto sent a picture of where they were to Anixia. After a few minutes, she came flying over our heads. She went around several times before going down and landing. She told Naruto, nice open land, forests I can eat from, this is a very nice place," as she spread her wings. As she looked through Naruto's eyes, Kyuubi thought, "I'll admit, I wouldn't mind living in a place like this." Naruto chuckled. He told them as they came in, both Anixia and Kyuubi are impressed. When they did, he took off his helmet and lowered his chainmail hood, letting his spiky hair grow back up. He took a look. The estate was a one-story building made of stone that had been painted a pale yellow that looked regal. On one side of the building, there was a small garden area. Nearby, there were other, smaller buildings. One looked like a hot spring, and the other was a smithy or armory that was pretty impressive. Lastly, what looked like a shed was there. The whole place looked old and empty, which was a shame. Damage from the weather had worn down and scratched the paint and taken tiles off the roof. The garden was full of weeds, and the grass had grown so tall that it was almost as high as their calves. Kushina sighed. She said in a soft voice, "This place has seen better days." Naruto hugged her and told her, "We'll make it shine again." As they walked in, she smiled. The outside showed that the inside was empty. The whole building smelled musty, and there was a lot of dust and dirt everywhere. Naruto looked around and saw that the house had been left quickly based on a table that had been knocked over and some paper that was lying around. He carefully picked up the table and put it back in place. He said in a soft voice, "Dad was in a hurry to face the Kyuubi." Kushina nodded. She said with sadness, "And no one ever came back to straighten up." As they went deeper into the house, they passed a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen. The hallway was partially blocked by an open door. When Naruto looked inside, he saw that it was a big office, library. There was more paper everywhere, and some of it had faded seals or notes on it. Naruto looked around as Kushina stood in the doorway. This was your father's office, and it was also where all the Namikaze's knowledge was kept. There are books, storage scrolls, more storage scrolls, and all the jutsus and other things the Namikaze ever learned are all in here. It's a librarian's or Orochimaru's wet dream. Naruto made an angry noise. He said, "I don't want to hear about that crazy person right now. Kushina chuckled. You can study later. For now, let's check out the rooms. Naruto moved away from her, but he didn't want to. He followed her down the hall. They found a few doors. Kushina pointed to one at the end of the hallway. That was our room, your dad's and mine. The room next to it was to be yours, and it still will be once we're done redecorating, she said, choking up a bit. Naruto walked up to the door and slowly opened it with his hand. What he saw for a moment made him stand still. The whole room was painted sky blue with balloons and clouds that looked happy. A toy chest with stuffed animals and small toys for babies was propped up against a wall. On top of the other was a crib. There were a lot of baby clothes in a closet that was open. Naruto looked around. His black armor made him feel very out of place. He went back to the door and saw Kushina crying. He whispered, "This was going to be my room?" He turned and went to the crib as she slowly said, "Yes." Slowly, a glove with claws reached out and touched the crib's bed. In his mind, he could see a baby version of himself cooing sleepily while his mother softly sang a lullaby and Minato stood in the doorway, happy and protective. When he turned around, he saw his parents playing with him and his toys. When he looked out the window, he saw himself running around while his father chased him. He sat down slowly and moved to the middle of the room. He shut his eyes for a short time. He felt Onyxia's calm presence inside of him. He felt something else after that. Regret, coming from somewhere else. Kyuubi's voice, which was very small, said, "I'm sorry, Naruto." The nine-tailed vixen went deeper into her cage and stopped talking to Naruto. Kushina came in and hugged her son, who was shaking and crying quietly. Mother and son cried in a room that never got to do what it was meant to do, which was house a growing baby. Outside the walls of Namazi, Hiyashi Hyuga stood in front of the gate and looked at the walls. He remembered that when he was a little boy, his parents brought him here to play with Minato while their parents talked. He drank some sake from the bottle he was holding. He took a small step back and then looked back up. They were best friends back then. Hiyashi could let go of the stress of being the oldest son in the Hyuga Min family when he was with Minato. He might be like any other boy. He had tears in his eyes, so he used the sleeve of his kimono to wipe them away. He turned while taking another sip. He looked down and saw a second person nearby. He said in a slightly slurred voice, "So, you're here to mope around too?" Sume looked at him and then at the wall again. She said softly, "Yeah." Not long after the Uzukunoichi moved to Konoha, Sume met Kushina. During the Third Shinobi War, they were sent on missions together. Using Sume's skill at tracking and Kushina's skill with a sword, they were able to do a lot of damage to enemy forces. They became fast friends because they were both raised to be a little bit like boys. They became Junin together after that. Even after Kushina joined Anbu, they still stayed best friends. When they both found out they were pregnant, they promised to look out for each other and the kids of the other. A promise I broke pretty badly. Sume thought sad thoughts. After Kushina's outburst in the council chambers, Sume felt like an even bigger fool. Naruto's parents were so painfully obvious now. The two clan leaders kept looking at the walls, but they didn't know that a third person was watching them from a nearby roof. Tsunade sat on a roof nearby and drank a bottle of sake. She looked at the wall and the house of someone she had thought of as her daughter. As soon as the Uzu refugees arrived, Tsunade was put in charge of healing the sick and hurt and giving everyone a checkup. Kushina was one of the last people she had seen. The Kunoichi had said she was fine, so two Anbu had to drag her in before she would agree to an exam. Tsunade liked how brave she was, so she took Kushina under her wing. The girl's parents and family had all stayed behind to make a last stand, so Tsunade was the only one who could help her. Kushina liked her and thought of her as both a mother and an older sister. Tsunade was happy to take on both roles, even though she was still sad about her brother's death. All of that had changed when her love, Dan, died. Grieving that she couldn't save him and thinking that she had killed him by giving him her necklace, she had left Konoha, leaving Kushina confused. Even though it hurt, she thought Kushina would be safer without her. And look what happened, she thought bitterly as she drank the last of the sake. Now, the girl she had thought of as her daughter hated her and her friends. She had every right to do that. As she stood up, Tsunade sighed. Before she left to go back to her office, she took one last, sad look at the Namikaze home. Both Hiyashi and Sume did the same thing near the wall. They took one last look before going back to their own homes. One to think about how she could ask for forgiveness and a second chance to fix her broken friendship. The other person to feel bad about himself and be sorry for what he did. Below Konoha. A figure limped slowly through a dark tunnel. A quick flash of light showed that he had a bandage over his right eye, that his right arm was in a sling, and that he was holding a cane in his left hand. Danzo moved through his secret route facility and got to his office in the end. He got there quickly and went straight to a file cabinet. He rummaged through it and pulled out a bunch of papers with his seal and the seal of the Tsuchikage on them. With a simple flick, the papers fell into an empty trash can, where they were set on fire. Now, if I could only get a hold of the Tsuchikage's papers. Old Jerk made me give him a copy of them so he could make sure I wouldn't try to blame him. He said she would never come back. He sat down and used chakra to make a seal on his desk. Soon, two people in masks and robes came into view. Yes, Danzo-sama? One asked. Danzo took a look at both of them. I'm afraid our situation is getting worse. You two are to take a small group to Iwa and, if possible, infiltrate the Tsuchikage's office. Find any records of transactions between me and him, as well as any other information that could help Konoha. Both of them nodded, and then they were gone. When Danzo put chakra into a different seal, this time only one figure showed up. Yes, Danzo-sama? The person your men have been following, are we sure we know who they are? It is definitely the one you helped Orochimaru get 19 years ago, the figure told Danzo-sama. The Warhawk said, okay, take a squad and secure the target. Bring them back unharmed and put them in one of our better holding cells. We will need them in the future as a bargaining chip. The person bowed, and then they were gone. Danzo sighed and looked down at the papers on his desk. For now, I have to move slowly. Who knows what Kushina knows, and because of her, this Demon Dragon Rider. I need to find a way to get them to do what I want. If I can do it, I will have all the power in the world. Sarutobi, Konoha will be mine, and I will prove once and for all that I was always better. Danzo then went to work. Namazi Estate, that night. When they had calmed down, Naruto and Kushina started cleaning the whole house with the help of dozens of clones of Naruto. They dusted and put everything in order. One clone went shopping while wearing the hooded robe and lower face mask that Naruto wore when he wasn't in his armor.
He bought enough food to replace most of the food that had gone bad.
The yard work would have to be done carefully, because it wouldn't do for a ninja patrol to come by and see the Demon Dragon Rider using Shadow Clone Jutsu to pull weeds. This would raise suspicions, especially among those who knew Naruto's work. Naruto could control the plants and make the work easier by using magic. After a small dinner, Kushina went to the room she and Minato used to share to sleep or think about the past. Naruto had decided to go outside. Around the side of the house, Anixia was curled up in a ball. She made a soft rumbling sound as Naruto came closer. He climbed over her legs and sat down on her side. She said softly, "You're troubled." "Yes, I am. There is just so much I need to do, and now that I'm in Konoha, I need to know what's changed, but I can't tell you, or I'll blow my cover," he said, stroking her side gently. "Then maybe you should blow it. Your friends have probably been sad for the past 4 years because they thought you were dead. That Hinata girl didn't seem like what you said she was." Naruto groaned. "But I can't. If I reveal myself now, the council will be all over me. They'll find a loophole in the contract or back out of it altogether. And when they do, they'll come. You, me, and my mom can fight, and we can fight well. But we can't take on an entire hidden village, not with a garrison of thousands of ninja. The only way I can reveal myself is if I can get the daimyo's protection." Anixia huffed. "Yes, I don't think we would have to fight all the ninjas in this village. Many of the shinobi members seemed upset at your loss, especially since your mom kept reminding them. I think they would side with us, whether to repay you or your mom, and many of the shinobi would follow their Hokage's orders." Naruto gave a head shake. "No, their hatred of Kyuubi is too big of a risk. For now, they'll just think of me as a mystery." Anixia huffed again. "It's up to you, but we need to find a rider for the other egg. I think fate brought us here to find one." Naruto chuckled. He scratched her side and said, "You know how I feel about that fate stuff." She chuckled. I know. Naruto Namikaze is not bound by fate or man's laws. He does what he wants." Naruto chuckled. He yawned and stretched as he said, "You know it. He mumbled, "It's late." Onyxia wrapped herself around him and kept him warm. "Then stay here, little one, and I'll keep you safe." As Naruto fell asleep, he nodded. Hyuga compound. Hinata was in bed in her room. She was wearing a simple tank top and sweatpants. Under her pillow was a kunai, which was easy for her to get. But a kunai couldn't keep her dreams from coming true. She tossed and turned as she started to think about a dream. She ended up in a big field with lots of flowers. The sun was up in the sky. She looked down and saw that she was dressed the same way she was before she heard that Naruto had died. She slowly turned her head back up and gasped when she saw a figure in orange and blue coming toward her. His blonde hair moved in the wind, and his whiskered cheeks smiled. As Naruto Uzumaki got closer to her, he smiled and gave her a wave. Hinata felt a tightness in her chest and a warmth on her cheeks that she hadn't felt in 4 years. She walked up to him with a smile on her face. They spent more and more time together. But when he was just a few feet away from her, his smile disappeared and his eyes grew wide with fear. Hinata was confused, and he began to move away. She asked, Naruto-kun, what's wrong?" But her voice was hard to hear. She looked down and saw herself dressed like a ninja. The gauntlets were on her arms. Naruto moved back out of fear. He started to run away. Why you're not Hinata. You're a monster. A cold-blooded killer." Hinata went after them. She ran after him and yelled, "Naruto-kun, wait. Wait." He ran and cut through a forest. She was always right behind him. She ran into a clearing all of a sudden. The black armored figure stood there with one hand on Naruto and the other on his blade. She growled and ran at them with her swords drawn. As he swung his sword, the demon dragon rider laughed. She used her hooks to block, then grabbed the blade with both of them and ripped it out of his hands. She swung her sword, cutting through the armor he was wearing and stabbing him deeply in the chest and neck. He gurgled and then fell to the ground, blood dripping from his wounds and pooling under his helmet. She got on her knees, eager to see the person who would dare to hurt Naruto. She pulled off the helmet but screamed as she fell backward. She moved away from the blue eyes that looked at her with no life. Stay away from the blood-stained birthmarks on the whiskers. As she looked at Naruto, who was wearing the bloody armor of the demon dragon rider, she shook like a leaf. Then, the body slowly started to move and sit up. She cried and shook as the dead body of the guy she liked looked at her and talked to her. "This is what happens to monsters," he said in a hollow voice. "Monsters only hurt the people they love." She made a screaming sound. Hinata jumped out of bed, drenched in sweat. Her skin was cold and wet. Her eyes looked around the room while her hand held the kunai. She murmured, "A dream?" Yes, it was just a dream. But it was different from any other dream she had ever had. She hadn't had a dream about Naruto in years. Now, though, she dreamed that he was the demon dragon rider. She got into bed slowly and tried to forget what she had just seen. But as she was starting to fall asleep, she heard a voice in her head that she had never heard before. "Soon, you'll have to choose between being a demon or a protector. Soon." The voice got quieter and she fell back to sleep. The following morning, Naruto took a few light breaths as he ran around the Namazi estate again. He was hiding his hair with a bandana around his head and his lower face with a face mask. His chest was bare, and a few light scars and a muscled torso were visible. He was still wearing black boots and pants. Onyxia flew around in the sky, looking for food in the Namikaze grounds. Below, Kushina used her katana to do several kata. She moved easily from one place to another, and there was no sign that she had been held captive for 18 years. After a few months of almost constant training, she was able to get her chakra control, strength, and skills back. While they were training, an Anbu showed up in front of the Namikaze estate. He went to the gate, looked at it, and then touched one of the seals and sent chakra into it. A loud bell could be heard inside the grounds. Kushina looked up, as did Naruto. He hurried inside while she went to the gate. The Anbu bowed his head as the gate opened. "Sorry to bother you, Namikaze-san, but the Hokage has asked for you and Oni-san to be there." Kushina did nothing but nod. "Tell the Hokage we'll be there soon," she said as she shut the gate and the Anbu vanished. She turned around and went back into the house. Before putting on his leather bracers and greaves, Naruto put on his black robe and pulled up the hood. He looked up when Kushina came over and got her own stuff. She said, "Tsunade wants to see us." probably to tell us what's going on. Naruto nodded. Let's not keep her waiting, he said, and his voice changed from its usual sound to one that was a little deeper and more guttural. He had practiced it in case he could use Kyuubi's or his own chakra. In half an hour, they were standing in front of the Hokage. Tsunade was surprised by how Oni had changed, especially because he now had red eyes that flashed. Shikaku and Shikamaru Nara, as well as the Hokage's advisors, were also there. Oni had a look around. He asked, "You called for us, Hokage-sama?" Tsunade nodded. "Yes," she said. "We need to tell you what's going on now and what our plans are so far." She turned to a map that was on an easel. "Right now, we're at war with the shinobi villages of Iwa, Kumo, Oto, and a few smaller villages they've taken over. On our side of the field are Suna, Kusa, Taki, Tori, Hoshi, Nami, and Yuki. Kiri is staying out of this because they don't think they're ready for another war. This means they'll wait to see who wins and join them." Shikaku pointed to places on the border of both Konoha and Suna. "In the northeast, Kumo basically blew through the countries there and took some of our border outposts. In the north, Oto did the same thing and built a fortress on the northern side of the Valley of the End. The only way to really get into Oto and conquer it is to take the Valley of the End first. Iwa has been forced to split its attention to the west of us. They have attacked us along our western borders. Both Taki and Kusa have tried to annoy Iwa, but their small numbers mean that for now, they're just a nuisance. At the same time, Iwa has also launched a series of raids against Suna. Most of these raids have been ineffective because the heat and sand of Suna have made most of their best earth jutsus useless." Oni nodded. "I see. So basically, Konoha is fighting a war on 3 fronts. The western front is the easiest to deal with right now, since most of your more powerful allies are fighting there. However, your northern and northeastern fronts are problems. Oto has strengthened their southern border, which deters invasions there. However, their western border is still open to attacks from Taki, if Taki can find the numbers to raid there." Tsunade nodded. "Right. That's our problem right now. The first thing we need to do is set up a defensive line that the enemy can't break through. Once that's done, we can start trying to get Kiri to join us. That way, they'll bother Kumo from the southeast, which will distract them. Then we..." "No." Everyone turned to look at Kushina. "Like you said, Kiri is waiting to see who wins. If we try to get them to join us, it will show that Konoha is weak and desperate." Homura gave Kushina a dirty look. He told them, "Diplomacy is not a sign of weakness. Yes, if you don't use it right. Diplomacy works best for people who don't need it. If you have the upper hand, it's better to negotiate then than to try to negotiate when you have nothing to offer," Oni said. "Once the defensive line is set up, it would be a much better idea to attack one of those 3 countries." Homura and Kaharu laughed out loud. "You must be crazy to think that's possible. We can't set up a defensive line and then invade one of their countries." "That's crazy." Shikamaru seemed to be thinking, though. "Would you mind telling me why you think that?" he asked. Oni nods. "Of course. You all forget who or what you've hired to help you."
With my dragon, I'm not tied to the ground, so I can travel farther, faster, and be harder to find than an invasion force."
Kaharu glared at Oni and asked, "So, you think you're a one-man army that can beat a whole village of shinobi by yourself?" Oni chuckled. He moved toward the map and said, "No, but I think I can handle a village with only half its ninjas. Oto is too weak to be a real threat. Iwa has the most shinobi and is the biggest threat because their earth jutsu is perfect for fighting fire jutsu. However, they are being held back by the number of allies attacking them. That leaves Kumo. Kumo is the best enemy to take out first, and I know how." Shikaku moved closer. "How would we get rid of Kumo?" Oni said, "It's easy. We give them a target they can't refuse, which is this fortified outpost here. It's strategically placed to keep Kumo from getting too close to our borders. A small number of ninja could defend it, but it would take a large number to flush them out. My plan is that we send only the minimum number of ninja to defend this outpost. Kumo will see this as a chance to get closer to Konoha's borders and send a large force to take this outpost. In the meantime, I can move around behind them and attack Kumo." All eyes were on Oni. Tsunade was surprised, the elders were suspicious, and Kushina was impressed. Both Naris did nothing but nod.
Shikaku said, "You know what?
I think I like this guy." Everything was quiet and peaceful in a small town north of Konoha. Except for one small store that sells quick things. There were several yells, then a loud scream, and then a man with his crotch in his hand stumbled out. Several things were thrown at him while a woman's angry voice followed him. "Next time, I won't just fucking punch your tiny ass limp dick, you raping ass fucker." The voice came from a redhead who looked angry and grumbled as she rolled the wheelchair she was sitting in behind the store counter and then hit her head on the counter. "I really, really hate my life." An old voice said, "Toya, you should care more about the customers." When Toya looked up, she saw an old woman walking toward her. "He wanted to take me to the back and fuck my brains out. He actually thought I would do it just because I was a fucking cripple. What was I supposed to do, Kangohei-san, pull up my skirt and say, 'Jump in'?" She muttered as she sat back up. The old woman laughed. She said, "Still as fiery as the day I found you." Toya was one of the 4 Ado ninjas who were sent to bring Sasuke Uchiha to Ado 6 years ago. Even though that mission should have been easy, it turned out badly for both sides. The Sound 4 hurt 2 Junin and then had to deal with a group of genin led by a new Chunin who were following them. The number of them had been cut down, so they had to split up and deal with each one individually. Toya was one of the last ones to deal with Shikamaru Nara, the Chunin. She had him pinned down and was getting ready for the final blow when Tamari from Suna showed up and turned the fight on its head. With one summon, Toya's lower body was buried under a downed tree. At that point, Toya should have died. Orochimaru gave her a curse mark that could help her heal, but it wasn't very good at it. The damage to Toya was too bad for it to get better. However, fate had something else in mind. Toya woke up in a hut. Flashback. Toya woke up slowly and groaned in pain because her whole body hurt. She looked around weakly, taking in a simple wooden hut room. She was on a bed mat and a blanket was over her. She groused, "Where am I?" A soft old voice said, "My vacation home." When Toya turned around, an old woman in a worn-out kimono walked in. "My name is Kangohei." Toya looks at her. "Where am I, besides in a small room that stinks?" Kangohei came over and put some water in a bowl to soak a cloth. She put the cloth on Toya's head and said, "We're about 10 miles south of where I found you. You've been unconscious for 4 days, and your fever just broke last night." Toya groaned. "When can I leave? I need to get home as soon as possible." "Leave? Sorry, but you're not going anywhere," said the old lady as she started to make tea. Toya growled weakly. She asked, "Why? Are you some kind of slaver? Are you going to sell me to some fat pig whose dick hasn't been straight in 10 years? Kangohei looks at her. "No. Your legs and spine are too hurt for even a ninja medic to fix. You're paralyzed from the waist down." His eyes got bigger. She said in a whisper, You're fucking me, right?" Toya's eyes started to water when Kangohei shook her head, and she tried to move her legs. She yelled and swore, but nothing changed. She finally gave up, turned away, and started to cry softly. Flashback is over. After that, Kangohei did everything she could to help Toya. At first, the former Ado Kunoichi wanted to die and had even tried to kill herself a few times. But she finally decided that she would at least try to live. So, she now worked with Kangohei in a small store that sold supplies and offered healing services. Toya muttered to herself as she picked up the book she had been reading before the man she had hurt bothered her. She had been pretty tense lately because of some dreams she had been having. She had dreams of a man with blonde hair and a woman with red hair who smiled at her. Toya couldn't tell if they were memories or dreams because they were so blurry. She only knew that she didn't like it and couldn't sleep because of it. When the doorbell rang, Toya looked up and saw a man who didn't stand out in any way. He stopped and looked around, then moved on, letting the door close behind him. He went to a different aisle, and Toya just shrugged and went back to reading. The man came back a few minutes later with a bottle of water and a bag of chips. Toya rang them up. She said, "That'll be 100 ryo," but she didn't really listen to the man. The man asked, "Toya of Ado?" Toya stopped and slowly looked up. The man had disappeared into a henge, revealing a figure in a cloak, hood, and mask with only slits for eyes and the kanji for root on the forehead of the mask. She asked in fear, "Who are you?" He just said, "Danzo-sama wants to talk to you." At that moment, a syringe was put into her neck, and behind her, another root agent appeared. As she fell forward, she felt her body getting weaker. The first root looked up and gave a nod as he moved toward the back. The second one grabbed Toya and snuck out of the store without being seen. Soon after, the first one joined him on a nearby roof, where he was cleaning blood off the kodaichi he was carrying. He said, "It's done." They left when the other root nodded. Soon after, a fire in the back room spread to the store, which caught fire. Mission briefing room in Konoha. Kakashi Hatake, Maeda Guy, Kurenai Yuhi, and Asuma Sarutobi all stood at attention before Tsunade. Kushina and Naruto, who were both fully armed, stood next to her. Even though she was wearing her mask, everyone in the room knew that Ona's friend Zetsume was really the wife of Minato Namikaze, Kushina Namikaze. Kurenai, Asuma, and Guy were in awe of the woman, and some of them were afraid of her. Kakashi, however, was avoiding looking at her. Tsunade gave a sigh. "I've brought you four here for a mission that is very dangerous and risky, but if we succeed, we might be able to hurt our enemies a lot." As Tsunade talked, they all nodded. "We're moving most of our troops out of the Ishimori, Stone Forest, fortress. Kumo will see this and, hopefully, send a lot of ninjas to try to take the fortress. I'm sending you four to strengthen the fortress." Asuma took another puff from his cigarette. "Hokage-sama, if I may ask, what is the point of this? It seems like you want them to take the fortress." Tsunade nodded to Oni. "In a way, I want Kumo to fight this battle so that Kumogakure no Sato is less protected. That way, Oni here who have sneaked past enemy lines can attack the city itself, forcing Kumo to redirect its forces to protecting the city. Right now, Kumo can send its ninja after us with no one to stop them. Also, if we force Kumo to fall back, it could get Kiri to join our side as well." Asuma nods and takes a step back. At this point, Kakashi speaks up. "What should we do about Ishimori? Should we let them take it and harass them in a guerrilla-style way, or should we hold the fortress until the end?" Tsunade ponders it for a moment. She said, "If everything goes well, it won't matter if we hold the fortress. I'd rather as many of our troops live. If you have to, retreat and harass the enemy troops." Four of the Junin nod. "Understood, Hokage-sama." Tsunade nods. "By 7 a.m. tomorrow, you should all be on your way. You're free to go." The four Junin left, and both Oni and Kushina looked at Tsunade. Kushina said, "If that's all, Hokage-sama, we'll leave." Tsunade put her hand up. She said softly, "Kushina, please, I'd like to talk to you." Kushina tensed up and looked at Oni, who did nothing but nod. Kushina went back to talk to Tsunade. "Fine." Kushina sat down in a chair while Oni went outside to wait. As she looked at her, Tsunade took a deep breath. "Kushina, I'm not going to make up for what I did. I failed you and your son. I know nothing I say or do will make up for that, but I want to try. Please, Kushina, I'll do anything to show you how sorry I am and how much your friendship means to me." Kushina just sat there, with her mask still covering her face. At last, she reached up, took it away, and kept her face calm. "Tsunade, when I lived in Konoha, you were one of the people I was closest to. You were like a second mother to me. I guess I do want that back, but I can't just forgive you. You left me when I needed you the most. If you had been here to bring Naruto, I probably wouldn't have been kidnapped and sold as a slave." As Kushina talked, Tsunade looked down. "I may never be able to forget or fully forgive you for that," she sighed as she looked down. "But if I never forgave you, I would be no better than the people in this village. I'm willing to try to be friends with you again if you can show me that you really mean what you say. But you have a lot to do before that happens." As Kushina stood up, Tsunade looked up and went to the door. The kunoichi with red hair stopped. "But I promise you this, Tsunade. If you ever betray me or someone close to me, I will make you wish you had never been born." With that, she put on her mask and left. When she got close, Naruto looked up. He asked, "Is everything okay?" She nodded. As they left, she said, "Yeah, everything's fine." Several people were watching the door from the roofs nearby. One looked at the other. He asked as he ate some chips, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" As she looked at Choji, Ino sighed. "We need to find out more about this guy. Anything we can learn about him will help us if we get into trouble with him. I wish Forehead Girl didn't have to work right now. She'd be a big help in terms of strength." Shikamaru sighed. He muttered, "We're not going to find anything out." Neji could hear them fighting from the other side of the street. "Hinata-sama, I have to agree with Shikamaru-san. If what you said is true, we won't learn much. When Hinata looked at him, he took a few steps back. Well, we're going to find out something, because I don't like this guy at all. Lee grinned. Yosh. Maybe he'll fight with me so I can show him the flames of youth. Tenten smacked him. That will make him leave, and we won't hear anything more about it. A minute later, two people came out of the tower. One wore black armor and the other wore a mask. All of the ninjas got quiet as they watched the pair leave, and then they crept up behind them. Naruto took an oath. He said to Kushina, it had to be them following us. She gave him a look. She asked, who are they, exactly? The rest of the Konoha 12, he said, are mostly my friends. Kushina nods. Okay, so how do you want to handle this? He said, I can't tell them I'm alive yet, so we just deal with what we can. As they went to the Namazi estate, she gave a nod. Kiba growled up there. They're going to the Namazi estate. That jerk lives in the house of my mom's friend. I should. Shino said, you won't be able to do anything, Kiba-san. This man almost took out an Iwa fortress of 500 ninja all by himself. Against him, you'd be like a fly on an elephant's backside. Kiba growled in anger. When Naruto and Kushina got to the front of the estate, they saw someone leaning against the wall and stopped. Kakashi slowly looked up as they both stopped. He started to move toward them, but stopped when Ki hit him. Kushina walked up to him and took off her mask. She said coldly, hello, Kakashi. As she got closer, Kakashi didn't move because she was so determined to kill him. Kushina, please, let me. Don't tell me anything, Kakashi. I've heard that you were my son's sensei, and I don't care if that's true. What I care about is that you had nothing to do with my son before that, she yelled. That's not true. I did what sensei told me to do. I made sure I was part of the Anbu guard that watched over him, and every time I was on duty, Naruto was well protected. If I had known he was Yurin Minato's son, I would have done even more. I would have adopted him. He shouted, tears falling from his eye. Before Kushina could answer, she felt Ona's clawed gauntlet on her shoulder. As he looked at her, she turned. Mom, he's right about one thing. When I was younger, I remember an Anbu with a dog mask and hair like his was always watching my back. He may have been a bad sensei, but he did look out for me, he said in the ancient language. Kushina, who had been learning the ancient language, just nodded and then turned to look at Kakashi. If what you said is true, Kakashi, you have my thanks for that. But I've heard that you weren't the best sensei to my son. Why did you leave him for the Uchiha? She asked. Kakashi looked down, and you could see shame in his eye. He didn't say anything right away. I wish I could say the only reason I did it was because the council told me to, but that would be a lie. There was that, and it was also because I felt I owed Obito a debt, which I could pay by teaching him. I swore I was going to teach Naruto everything I could after the Chunin exams, but the invasion made us weaker, and... He was stopped when Kushina hit him in the face with his fist, sending him flying backwards. As Kushina stood over him, he looked up in fear. She looked down at him and said, you left my son's training because of a stupid debt and orders from people who have no business meddling in shinobi matters. You could have paid your debt without leaving my son, and your loyalty is to the Hokage, not the council. Kakashi. You're trash, she said as she turned away. Kakashi hung his head and left, as Kushina looked to Naruto. I'm going back inside, Oni-san. Take care of the other people on your own. As Kushina walked into the estate, the eyes of the other shinobi who were watching grew wider. Naruto looked at the roofs they were standing on, and his voice got deeper. Well? He asked with his arms crossed. They got down in a shy way. Oni-san, we were just, Tenten stuttered out. You were just watching me, right? You wanted to find out about me, right? He asked. Hinata said, can you blame us? When Naruto heard this, he looked at her. I don't go prying into your business, do I? He looked into her eyes, which looked suspicious and a little angry. Shikamaru stepped in when he thought a fight might start. Oni-san, we're sorry if we hurt your feelings. We just want to learn more about you. At that moment, Onyxia's head slithered over the wall of the Namikaze estate and looked down at the Konoha shinobi. She made a soft growl, which made everyone step back a little. Naruto laughed and put his arms across his chest. Oh, you're curious, alright. You want to know my strengths and weaknesses in case I turn traitor and you have to fight me. I understand. You're just doing what you're trained to do. The only one who didn't look shy was Hinata, who just stood there and looked back at him. Naruto let out a long sigh. Hyuga-san, have I done something to upset you? I don't like the way you're acting, and I don't know what I did wrong, he asked. Hinata answered with a low growl. The dream she had the night before was still clear in her mind. She didn't know what it meant, but she did know that this mercenary, this dragon rider in front of her, was not what he seemed to be. You haven't done anything, she said as she turned and walked away. I just don't trust people who sell their skills to the highest bidder. Shino moved forward slowly and bowed. He said, you'll have to be patient with Hinata-san. She hasn't been the same since we lost a friend. Naruto slowly nodded. Oh, was it the Uchiha? I heard he betrayed his clan and that he was a big hit with the girls. Most people got scared when they heard that, but Kiba laughed. Hinata is mad at Sasuke? Haha, that's funny. She's mad at Naruto. Tenten put an end to Kiba's talk by giving him a hard elbow to the stomach. But Naruto had heard enough, and as the Hyuga ran away, he looked at his back. He asked quietly, I see. She cared about the Uzumaki boy, didn't she? Neji spoke while Ino smacked Kiba on the head and said, way to go. Yes, my cousin is sad about his death, especially after she found out what our clan did to him. Since then, she's become the opposite of what she used to be. If anything, she's become the ideal Hyuga. He didn't sound proud or happy, just sad. Naruto just nodded once more. He answered softly, yes. Before Lee spoke, there was a strange pause. Oni-san, I was wondering if you'd be willing to spar with me, he said. Naruto looked straight ahead, shook his head, and then looked at Lee. Your name? Rock Lee, the second green beast of Konoha. Lee said with pride. Naruto did nothing but nod. Yes, Lee. Maeda Guy was your sensei. Well, Lee, I'd love to spar with you, but not today. Tomorrow I'm going on a mission. Maybe when I get back. Lee nodded. Of course, Oni-san. Thank you for agreeing to a very fun event for young people. Tenten smacked him. She asked, would you shut up about youth? Lee just started to cry anime river tears, and Oni just laughed to himself. Very funny, but I have to get ready for my mission tomorrow, so please excuse me. With that, he bowed and went into the estate. Everyone else looked around at each other. Shino said, that was interesting. Kiba muttered, that guy scares me, while Akamaru barked next to him. Did you see that sword? I've never seen one that long. Tenten gushed, finally able to be her weapon-loving self. This made everyone fall on their faces. Inside, Naruto had stopped and was leaning against the wall when Anixia came over and pushed him with her nose. She asked, what's wrong? Naruto looked up and spoke in his usual way. He looked down. Hinata. Did you see her? She was just like Neji or Sasuke. She was cold and angry, and from what I've heard, she's one of the most bloodthirsty ninjas in the village. Did I really make her feel that way about me? Kyuubi sighed. Yes. I swear, men are so blind to a woman's feelings. She used to follow you around all the time. If I didn't know better, I'd say she was head over heels in love with you. Why no one told you is beyond me, she said. He looked at the ground. Then I need to make things up to her. When the time is right, he said as he stood up and went inside. The line between Suna and Konoha. 4 people moved slowly through the barren land that was the border between Wind Country's deserts and Fire Country's forests. As he looked at his friends, Sasuke sighed. Soon after killing Orochimaru, Sasuke left and went to all of the bases that Orochimaru had set up around the elemental nations. He found the first one at Orochimaru's northernmost base. It was a tall teenage boy. The orange-haired teenager, who went by the name Jugo, had a special ability that let him change his body, making him stronger, faster, and able to do more. But he became crazy and hungry for blood because of this. Orochimaru said he would try to help the boy, but all he did was test out the boy's powers and use them to make his curse mark. Kimimaro Kagaya, one of Orochimaru's bodyguards and favorite vessel, had been a friend to Jugo before she died. Kimimaro became his friend and helped him keep his cool and stay in charge. Jugo was left alone after Kimimaro died fighting Gaara of the Sand. When Sasuke freed him, Jugo was so crazy that he almost killed him. That is, until Sasuke told him that Kimimaro died while helping him. Jugo started to calm down, and then he agreed to go with Sasuke to see what Kimimara's sacrifice was all about. Next was Karen, whom Sasuke met on Orochimaru's base island in the south. Karen had smooth red hair on one side and spiky hair on the other. She also wore glasses and had red eyes. Karen was left in charge of the southern base. She was very good at healing and sensing chakra. She also seemed to be attracted to Sasuke, since she tried to seduce him almost as soon as he asked her to join him in the last member of the team. The last person to join Sasuke's group was in fact the first. Suigetsu Hoizuki used to train with the 7 swordsmen of Kiri because he wanted to join them. When Zabuza's failed coup caused the group to break up, Suigetsu vowed that one day he would take all of the 7 swordsmen's swords. Soon after that, Orochimaru caught him and used him as a test subject. The young man with silver hair and purple eyes could now turn his body into water, which gave him a lot of power over water. After Sasuke set him free, they went to Wave, where Suigetsu stole Zabuza's sword, the Kabikari Huchu, from his grave. These 3 people agreed to help Sasuke train Itachi and kill him in the end. Sasuke had regretted his choice to find Suigetsu and Karen every day since he made it. Karen muttered, "Will you just shut up already, Sharkmouth? I'm sick and tired of hearing you complain that we're not finding the rest of that tin collection you want so badly," Suigetsu growled. "Don't treat the swords badly," he growled as he adjusted the one on his back. He had to wear it with the hilt off until he was ready to fight because it was so big. As he walked, Jugo just looked up at the sky. He gave a soft sigh. Sasuke was thinking about what they had heard in the last town. In the war they had started, Konoha had gone to hire the well-known demon dragon rider. He looked up at the clouds and sky. The rider of the demon dragon. Now there is someone to fight. A man is very skilled if he can do what he can do. If we went to war, I knew for sure that I was ready to take on Itachi. As he looked ahead, he sighed. Suigetsu's, OWWW. Stop it, you crazy B*TCH. Made him turn around in time to see Karen pull her fist out of the middle of Suigetsu's chest and then hit him with a kick that made his head split open. He sighed as Suigetsu slowly got back together, and Karen laughed and ran over. She put her arms around his shoulders and said, "Sasuke-kun, he was just being mean. He just moved them away." He said, "There's no time to play. Itachi was said to be in a small town north of us, and then he left." As she went along, Karen sighed. Suigetsu muttered as Jugo picked him up, but his head was still putting itself back together. He drank out of a bottle of water. "Damn stupid crazy B*TCH, all you do is think about Sasuke and his friends." He started to say more, but Jugo pushed him away. Jugo said in a calm voice, "Please don't talk about Sasuke-san that way. It makes me mad." After 3 days, Konoha Fortress Ishimori. During wartime, the fortress of Ishimori was the strongest point of Konoha's northern defenses. The name of the fortress came from the rocky area where it was built. At the base of a mountain in northeastern Fire Country, a lush forest grew a long time ago. But then the mountain turned out to be a very dangerous volcano. One day, it erupted so hard that the forest couldn't even catch fire. The trees turned to stone, making the forest look like a maze of stone trees. Konoha's northernmost defense was built in the middle of this maze of petrified trees and rocks. A stronghold with high walls that sloped down, towers with murder holes, and a strong gate. Because of how and where the fortress was built, it only needed about 400 ninjas to defend it against a force that was almost 5 times as big. The Junin commander looked at the report in the main building. He looked up at Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai. "So, we're supposed to take all but 100 ninjas, go to the petrified trees, let Kumo take this fortress, and bother them until they run away." Kakashi nods. "Yes. You need to make it look like you and the rest of your troops are moving to help hold up our defenses along the northwest front against Oto and Iwa. We'll stay here and hold for as long as we can." The commander took another look at the orders. "Please tell me why we can't just do that from inside the fortress." Kakashi sighed. "Because if we did that, we wouldn't be able to pull out a big part of their army to take this fortress and terrorize the countryside. If we did that, Kumo's defenses would be weakened, making it easier for someone to attack Kumo and force them to pull back their troops." The knight laughed. "Who would be that willing to kill himself?" Kurenai spoke up. "The rider of the demon dragon." The Junin's eyes got bigger, and then he looked at the paper. He didn't say anything right away. He said, I'll make it 125. That will give them more of a fight. Kakashi nods. He said, right, we'll get ready for an invasion. The 4 Junin then went on their way, while the commander sighed. Naruto gently stroked Onyxia's back in the far north, far from the Kumo border. Kushina stayed behind to protect the Namazi estate. After that, Naruto was able to move quickly and easily. Soon after landing the day before, Naruto sent clones to Kumo in the north. Some of them used his sexy jutsu, but they did it in different ways that made them look like different women. Some of them even made themselves look like average women. Others, who were regular shadow clones, hid parts of their faces with latex masks, wound makeup, hair dye, and contact lenses. They were slowly getting into Kumo and sending information back to Onyxia through mental links. They were also looking for places to hide, surprises, for when Naruto came to attack. As Naruto got off Onyxia, who looked at him, he let out a soft sigh. She poked him and asked, "What is it, little one?" He groaned. "I don't know. Ever since I met the others, I've felt confused. They're all my friends, but I don't know if I'm not hurting them by hiding who I really am." As he took off his helmet and chaincoif, she let out a soft sigh. She licked his head, which made more of his hair stand up. "To tell you the truth, there is no easy answer. We can't tell them who you are, but the longer you wait, the more it will hurt them. You have to follow your heart." Kyuubi laughed and said, "Good advice, Fire Breath." She said, "I've always found that following your heart leads you down the wrong path. Your instincts are much better because they never lie to you." Naruto groaned. As he sat down, he said, "You two are like my angel and demon." Well, I guess I'll just wait and see." As Naruto sharpened his sword, they both sighed and stopped talking. Kumo, 4 days later. The Raikage read the report that was in front of him. He looked at the Rakan Kumo Anbu in front of him and asked, "Is this right?" "Yes, Raikage-sama. Almost 3/4 of Konoha's soldiers at Ishimori have left. They were probably going west to strengthen defenses against Iwa and Otto." The Raikage barked. "Do they see us as less dangerous?" The Anbu said, "Well, as per your orders, we've been making light, random raids while we gather the main force for the invasion. I think they think we won't send a big force." The Raikage smirked. "Then we'll show them that they shouldn't count us out. Send a third of our troops to take Ishimori and start raiding the nearby countryside." The Anbu nods and gets up to go. The Raikage smirked. He told her, "I'll teach you not to underestimate Kumo." Outside his window, a window cleaner with a bald head, an eye patch, and a broken leg grinned to himself as he told Onyxia the news. The next day, Kumo. The Raikage, who went by the name A, smiled as he looked over the army in front of him. 1/3 of Kumo's attack force, or 3,000 ninjas, were ready to attack the northern part of Fire Country. He gave a nod of approval and then turned to the leader of the whole army. Yugito Ni is the Jinchuriki of the Nibi and the Kumo sword. As he came over, the blonde Junin gave him a salute. She said, "Raikage-sama, we're ready to go if you tell us to." And nodded. "Very good, Yugito-san. Your force will go first and attack the fortress. I'll send a second force after you take the fortress. With most of our force already holding their northern territory, Konoha will have to turn its attention back on us, which will give Otto and Iwa more room to invade further in." I looked at the men and women when Yugito nodded. "Now is our chance to destroy Konoha and take what belongs to our village by right. Fight for the glory and honor that will come to us if we win." The shinobi cheered and put their hands in the air. In a matter of seconds, they all rushed out of the village and headed south. Naruto watched the whole force move from high above, where he was too small for people on the ground to really see. He didn't look through his eyes, though. They had turned a bright gold-green color with a black slit in the middle. As Onyxia watched the army, her eyes were also shining. Naruto and Onyxia had learned that when they were flying, their minds could connect. This meant that Naruto could see and feel everything Onyxia did and saw. Naruto slowly drew his mind back and let out a soft sigh. "They are moving, but one of my clones says that the Raikage will send a second force to back up this one." Onyxia mentally nodded. She said, "Isn't that good? It means we won't have to deal with as many troops here." Naruto nods. "True. It also means that Kumo has more soldiers still alive. I'll have to make that right." He wondered. "We should go back to camp. I have a few thoughts." Anixia turned and went out into the woods, where she and Naruto were camping. When I got back to Kumo, he went back to his office. Inside was a man who looked just like him when he was younger. They were both dark-skinned and had white hair. I put on his Raikage robe, which had an open front that showed off his ripped chest. He also had huge metal weights around his forearms and a white mustache and goatee. Kurabi, his younger brother and a Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, was the other man. He had on sunglasses, a beard, and a scarf, but he wasn't wearing a shirt. On his back were also 8 swords. I turned toward him. Kurabi, since most of our troops are out in the field, you will be the main defense of this village. I need you to be on guard, even though we probably won't be attacked. The Hachibi Jinchuriki grinned. He started writing that down while I had a tick mark. I thought I told you not to rhyme near me? He asked. Kurabi just laughed as he put away his notebook. I think you did, maybe, but nothing can stop the rhyming bee. With that, he vanished right before I smashed his fist where he stood. He yelled, "Damn it, bye." When everyone in Kumo heard it, they all shook their heads in sadness. Ishimori, after 3 days. There was a lot going on at the fortress of Ishimori. Since most of the defenders were gone, the ones who were left had to beef up the defenses in certain places so that the trick would work and Kumo's forces would have to fight longer. Kakashi looked north, along the strongest part of Ishi's wall. The fortress was built so that the wall facing Kumo was the strongest and best protected. Its gate was on the south side, so enemies couldn't just attack it and get into the fort easily. Also, the wall above the gate was covered with explosive seals that could be set off from a distance. They would bury the main gate and anyone under it while the defenders held the breach or escaped through a secret tunnel exit hidden in the barracks. Ninjas set up explosive weapons like kunai, shuriken, ballisti, and small catapults all along the wall. They wouldn't work as well on shinobi as they did on groups of bandits or Ronin samurai. But they would help in this battle anyway. Kakashi looked far away, where he could see the smoke from campfires. The lookouts saw Kumo's army arrive last night and set up camp a few miles away from the fortress. Now, they could see Kumo's forces moving forward through the fallen trees that had turned to stone. He looked along the wall at the other defenders, who were getting ready for battle. A Chunin whispered to his partner at the front of the Kumo force. "Can't we move faster? At this rate, it will take us half a day to get close to the wall." When Yugito came over, his friend was about to answer. She said, "The reason we're moving slowly is to hide. That way, they don't have clear targets, and we'll be closer to them before they can attack. That's why you're a Chunin and not in charge. You have no sense of strategy. Now move." She moved on while the Chunin gave her the finger behind her back. Asuma took one last drag from his cigarette. He looked at his fellow Junin and said, "I sure as hell hope this works." They nodded, as Kakashi looked ahead. He waved his hand, and a few of the ninjas moved into place at the gun positions. The Kumo forces moved forward even more, and Kakashi hung his head. Fire. Both catapults and ballisti were used to shoot at the ninja forces that were coming. Yugito swore when she saw the weapons coming at her. The Kumo forces ducked down when they heard, "Take cover." And explosive barrels exploded above them or in the petrified trees. The ballisti bolts went deep into the petrified trees and went off at the same time. Several Kumo ninja died when they were hit by shrapnel or when the explosions went off. Yugito looked up. "Get moving. Back up against the wall, below their range of sight." The Kumo ninja jumped up and started running as heavy weapons fired at them. As they got closer, Kakashi watched. He yelled, "Open up." Shinobi began to throw kunai and shuriken all along the wall. The Kumo shinobi tried to shoot back at the enemy while dodging and moving around the obstacles. Several explosions happened because explosive notes had been placed among the petrified trees. This caught some of the Kumo shinobi by surprise. Several people were killed by the explosions, which tore their bodies apart. Shrapnel hurt or killed many others very badly. Even so, the Kumo shinobi kept pushing forward until the siege weapons could no longer hit the front lines. These shinobi started throwing kunai and shuriken at the defenders to give their friends cover. Yugito joined them, growling as she saw her group still struggling to get through the trees that had turned to stone. She looked up the wall and said, "This isn't working. We need to get our sappers up here right now." She told the shinobi who was close to her, "Stun tags on 3. Several shinobi put tags with the kanji characters for lightning on kunai and threw them over the wall. When the tags were set off, they sent out low-level lightning bolts that were meant to stun enemies. Kakashi's eyes went wide. He yelled, "Down!" Most of the defenders listened to him, but some were still hit and fell to the ground because their central nervous systems were temporarily overloaded. As Yugito's front line kept the defenders down, a group of ninjas who were good at breaking down enemy defenses rushed quickly forward. As Yugito joined them, they crouched against the wall. She asked, "Can you bust through this wall?" The Junin in charge of them said, "No way. It's too thick for our current weapons. We need some heavy-duty siege explosive tags. Your best bet is to try to hit the gate." Yugito nodded and pointed to a group of shinobi. She said, "Okay, you five, watch out for them as they go to the gate. We'll keep them focused here." The group of shinobi nodded and left, while she moved down the line. "Come on, people, keep your heads down and move." Kakashi looked down and saw that a group of Kumo ninjas had gotten too close to the wall and were starting to climb it. He gave a smirk and pointed to two shinobi who were standing next to two pots that were boiling. He yelled, "Oil, now!" The two shinobi tipped the cauldrons, which caused them to pour boiling oil into grates with chutes that led along the north wall. All along the wall, these chutes split off into holes. As the oil went down the chutes, it would split into smaller streams that would spray out of the holes and hit enemies below. When the boiling liquid fell and burned the shinobi who had started running up the walls, they screamed. When they fell, they burned from the inside out. When Yugito saw this, it made her angry and scared. Nibi also growled inside of her. "Those fools are brave enough to hurt our friends and allies, kitten. We should probably show them what they're up against." Yugito gave a growl. She was thinking this as a deep, burning blue chakra started to leak out of her body. Kurenai had used a genjutsu to catch a group of Kumo shinobi and then watched as they screamed in fear and died from being strangled. She turned because she felt a power that was like the one she felt 18 years ago, when she was still thinking about becoming an academy student, but not as strong. A force that Minato Namikaze had to die to defeat. She saw a blonde Kumo kunoichi with a dark chakra flare around her. She yelled, "Kakashi!" and pointed to the kunoichi. Kakashi turned around, and his eyes got very big. As Yugito jumped up, he whispered, "Dear Kami." She landed on the wall, where she cut the throats of two Konoha ninja who were close by. She gave him a mean look and ran at him. Kakashi just made it in time to block it. She pushed against him and said, "You will pay for what you did to my shinobi." Even though Kakashi was a strong ninja, he had trouble dealing with the power he was up against. Yugito smiled as the other hand came up, hit his arm, and pushed it away. She turned around and kicked Kakashi after being hit. The copy nin just barely stopped it, but the blow was strong enough to push him back a few steps. Yugito moved to attack, but a green blur stopped him. Guy showed up and stood his ground. He said, "I'm afraid I can't let you hurt my youngest rival." Yugito growled and went for an attack, but Guy got in the way. A fast-paced taijutsu match broke out between the two. The Kumo shinobi watched in amazement from below. Yugito was by far the fastest ninja in their village. This shinobi's speed was just as fast as hers, which was a surprise. It was the same for the shinobi in Konoha. Except that they were shocked by how fast Yugito was. The battle slowed down for a moment, but then it picked up again. Yugito dodged a spinning kick and tried to stab Guy in the leg, but Guy's arm stopped him. He quickly hit her in the chest, which made her fall. She stopped, panting from the blow, while Guy looked at his fist, which was slightly burned from the chakra that was flaring around her. He asked, "You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you?" She barked. She asked, "So what?" As she attacked again. Guy tried to block, but he got hit in the shoulder by a quick palm thrust. He took a small breath, but soon got back to normal. When Kakashi got better, he found that they were losing the battle. Following Yugito's attack, more and more of Kumo's shinobi were now trying to climb the wall. He watched as his soldiers attacked them with weapons and jutsu. He ran quickly to Asuma, who used his trench knives and wind chakra to cut apart any Kumo shinobi who got close to him. "Asuma, we can't hold the wall. Pull them back into the courtyard." Asuma nodded and started giving orders for the defenders to move back. Kakashi turned around and began making hand signs right away. When he was done, he said, "Chew on this." Yugito moved back to avoid another punch from Guy. She smiled and moved to attack while he was open, but a dragon of water blasted her back. She did a flip and landed on her feet. When she looked up, she saw Kakashi running toward her with a ball of lightning in his hand. She swore as she jumped and flipped over him, only to see Kakashi turn into smoke. The real Kakashi suddenly showed up above her and shot flames at her. She hit the wall because the fireballs were so strong. Guy was there when Kakashi landed. "Are you okay?" he asked. Guy nodded. He said, she was an opponent who was very young. Just as Kakashi was about to answer, there was a sudden explosion across from them. The gate had been blown open, and a small group of Kumo shinobi rushed in while throwing kunai with explosive tags. At the same time, a chakra flare went off, and Yugito flew out of the crater she was in. Her chakra had changed color to a dark blue and took the shape of a cat with one tail. Kakashi and Guy both took a deep breath as she ran at them. The office of Raikage. Raikage-sama. Urgent message from Yugito-san's camp. A's secretary ran into the office, where the Raikage was working out. He looked up and stopped. He asked, "What is it?" She gave him the message quickly. She said with excitement, "A shinobi from her camp sent this message 10 minutes ago via lizard summon. Yugito's forces have started breaking through the wall and are moving toward the gate. Ishimori is likely to fall in the next hour." The Raikage gave a grin. "Good. Tell our second force to march out. Once Ishimori and the area around it are safe, they'll start raiding south, which will force Konoha to send men to block us. If all goes well, Otto and Iwa will use this to their advantage and start their own pushes forward." The secretary gave a quick nod and ran off. As he went back to his weights, smiled. "Soon, Konoha, you'll get exactly what you deserve." Shinobi started getting the word out all over the village. The second force started to come together and get ready to leave. One of Naruto's infiltration clones, who was dressed as a street cleaner, saw that Kumo's shinobi forces were doing more work. He told one of the dozen or so messenger shadow clones that Naruto made every day. This clone split up and sent the information back to Naruto, who nodded in agreement. He said, "They're getting ready for the second wave of invasion. Kumo will be left with 4,000 shinobi, the Raikage, and the Hachibi Jinchuriki, which is more than enough to beat me if we don't play this carefully." Anixia nodded. She asked, "So, what's the plan? Nighttime attack?" Naruto gave a head shake. "Usually, yes. But this battle isn't about destroying Kumo. I want to keep civilian deaths to a minimum. A night attack would make it hard to see targets. My plan is to attack at dawn. I'm sure the Raikage will tell his village about their victory and they'll celebrate. If we attack at dawn, most of the defenders won't be able to react right away because they won't know where they are." Kyuubi chuckled. "That sounds about right. Me and some of the other Biju used to pretend to be humans. Man, you apes sure know how to get drunk." Naruto and Anixia both sweated. "Anyway, our main targets are the village wall, these warehouses, and the Anbu headquarters. My clones have also planted explosive tags at key defensive points. If we succeed, Kumo's ability to defend itself and make war will be severely damaged. They'll have to pull their offensive forces back to defend Kumo until the defenses are fixed. Kumo will be out of the war and stay defensive for years." Anixia was grinning. "So we bomb the places your clones haven't reached yet?" Naruto nodded. "Yeah, then I'll take the fight to the ground and see what I can do to break their spirits even more. I'll have to be careful in case any of their remaining Jinchuriki or the Raikage come after me." Anixia nodded. "While you do that, I'll keep flying cover for you." Naruto nodded. "Right. Well, the plan is set. Let's hunker down until tonight," he said as he lay back on a bedroll he had spread out. Anixia wrapped herself around him to protect him. Ishimori. The Konoha ninja were losing the battle. By setting off the explosive seals in the wall above the gate, they were able to stop the attack from coming through the gate. The shinobi there had jumped out of the way, and soon they were fighting over the rubble while being followed by enemy shinobi who went around them and poured through the hole. The enemy had gotten past the north wall. The Kumo shinobi had started to crowd over the wall, except where Yugito, Guy, and Kakashi were fighting. The people defending the fortress moved back into the courtyard to protect the barracks, which was now their only way out. Kurenai watched as they were slowly surrounded by other people. She yelled, "Asuma, we have to go back." Asuma shook his head as he used one of his trench knives to block a kunai. He yelled back, not without Guy and Kakashi. As if to answer him, Kakashi fell in front of him and started bleeding from what looked like claw marks on his chest. Guy landed nearby, just barely making it. Yugito grinned as she got ready to jump off the wall. Guy looked up. He grabbed Kakashi and said, "I'm afraid she might be stronger than me and Kakashi-san." Asuma gave them a nod. "Alright. All forces, fall back into the barracks. Move." Around 86 shinobi and the 4 Junin ran back into the barracks. They quickly put up a barrier in front of the door. Yugito landed, and her troops started to gather around her. She yelled, "They think they can hold us off in there? Burn it down." A few of the shinobi who knew fire jutsu were getting ready to attack the barracks when it suddenly blew up. A lot of the Kumo shinobi fell to the ground, and some of them were hit by flying objects. Yugito slowly stood up and looked at the smoking crater that was the barracks. Nibi's chakra was fluttering. Several shinobi ran up to the wreckage and looked around. One finally stood up. "There's no one else here, Yugito-san." Yugito gave a growl. Then they got away. "But how?" she asked as Nibi's chakra faded. "It doesn't matter. Start working on securing the fortress and taking care of the injured," Yugito said. Most of the shinobi ran off to do what he said, but he turned to another shinobi and spoke to him. "You, send a message to Kumo and tell the Raikage that we won." He gave a nod and ran off. Yugito inhaled deeply. "Those two really pushed me to my breaking point. If they had been any worse, I would have had to go to Two Tails." "Well, I haven't played in a while," said Nibi, purring from inside her. Yugito had a laugh. She said, "There will be time later. I have a feeling we'll have many fights ahead of us." Kumo, that night. Celebrations were going on all over the village of Kumogakure no Sato. It might look like Kumo has already won the war to someone who doesn't know much about it. As he stood on his balcony, the Raikage had a smirk on his face. "Today is a good day. We've shown Konoha that they were wrong to underestimate us by giving them a blow." For a change, his brother was a bit more quiet. "I don't know, bro. This all seemed too easy. Maybe Konoha is trying to make us feel dizzy?" A gave his brother a growl. "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" Karabi stopped rapping. "I'm just saying that maybe they moved away on purpose. What if we were supposed to invade Ishimori? What if they wanted us to?" The Raikage blinked. That doesn't make sense. Konoha's defenses are already weak, so why give us a stronghold in their northern lands?" Karabi shrugged. "I don't know, but it seemed way too easy to me." A grinned. "Maybe, brother, but for now, just chill out and go celebrate with the rest of the village." Karabi nodded. "You're right, bro. It's time for me to put on a show," he said as he jumped off the balcony and into the village below. The Raikage laughed as he went back to his office and took a bottle of sake out of a cabinet. He raised a glass to himself and said, "To future victories." A dark figure finished putting a clawed gauntlet on his left arm on the other side of Kumo's wall. Naruto took off his helmet and slowly put it on his head, securing it with the straps. "It's time for the show," he said, as his eyes turned red and his voice changed. When he turned to his dragon, he grinned, and the dragon gave a dragon-like smirk. The parties went on all through the night. As the moon started to go down, the parties started to wind down. Many of the people who went to the parties were too drunk to get home, or they fell asleep at the parties. At the same time, a dark shape moved slowly away from the wall and up into the night sky. It turned into a tiny black dot and flew to the mountain where the Raikage's tower was built. It landed high above the tower. Naruto grinned and sent out a small chakra flare as the moon began to go down below the horizon. One that was picked up by all of his clones. "So it begins," he said. A guard on Kumo's wall sighed as he watched a couple stumble out of a bar where they had been drinking. The man stopped the woman he was with, pushed her against the bar's wall, and started kissing her. The guard turned just in time to see a flash of movement near the wall tower to his right. He said, "Lucky jerk." "What the?" he started, but the huge explosion from that direction stopped him. It was followed by several more attacks all along the wall, which destroyed towers, the gate, and other important spots. It was woken up from a sleep brought on by alcohol by the sounds of explosions and confused screams. He fell out of his office and onto the balcony outside. He rubbed his eyes. When he was done, his mouth just dropped open in shock. The wall was completely broken. At the base, a lot of it had been destroyed. Explosions had also destroyed parts of the city that were very important for defense. As the Raikage was looking at this, a loud roar came from above him. He turned around just in time to see a huge black thing fall toward the village. It spread out its bat-like wings, pulled up, and let out another roar as it flew over the dead bodies. Shinobi and regular people alike stumbled out of their homes or bars and onto the streets below. When they heard the roar, they stopped. Then, when the feared demon dragon rider flew over, panic broke out. As Onyxia banked, Naruto turned his head and looked over the village. "My clones did a good job. Go to those warehouses now." "Right," she said as she turned the plane around and flew toward the edge of the populated area. As they got closer to their goal, Naruto smiled. He yelled, "Light M." Onyxia opened her mouth and a stream of fire came out of it. The fire spread to the row of warehouses, making them look like they were on fire in hell. The Raikage grunted as he tried to shake off the effects of the sake he had just drunk. He ran into the streets to try to get things back in order. "You men, get the civilians to the shelters. You, get some men, try to save the warehouses. The rest of you, come with me," he shouted. Onyxia flew over the warehouses again before turning around and heading back to the village. She went down while Naruto got out of her saddle and grabbed his sword and shield. As they went down, she yelled, "Get ready." Naruto got ready, jumped off, and used his chakra to absorb the impact of his landing. He fell down, got back up, and ran toward a group of shinobi who were coming at him. The lead Kumo shinobi, a Chunin, swung a kunai at him. Naruto ducked, swung his sword, and cut off the Chunin's legs. He stood up and cut the next shinobi in half with his sword. He stopped a punch with his shield and stabbed the shinobi who hit him. Then he kicked the next shinobi in the stomach, ripping it open. The last one ran straight at him. He turned to his left and used his shield to hit the shinobi while still looking back. He slowly turned his head toward the shinobi who was on the ground, moved toward him, and stabbed him in the back, killing him. He looked up and saw that more were coming. Behind his helmet, he just smiled. "Keep sending them." Onyxia went to her last target, which was the Anbu headquarters in Kumo. As she got closer, kunai and shuriken flew up to meet her. She tried to roll and dodge as best she could, but most of the time she just got hit or missed. A few of them did tear at the thin membrane on her wings, which hurt her. Not even close. As she jumped on the headquarters and let out a flood of flames, she thought. The building caught fire quickly and started to burn. As the Anbu started pouring out, Onyxia turned away and shot off a few fireballs for good measure. Naruto smiled as he threw a ninja into a wall and knocked him out. So far, the Kumo shinobi have attacked him in small groups because they aren't organized yet. He killed or knocked out each one of them one by one. When he suddenly looked up, 3 shinobi were shooting several lightning bolts at him. He rolled to one side and raised his hand while grunting. He yelled, "Gierda Tierra Calphus," which means, "break their calves." The spell worked just as it said. The calves of the 3 shinob broke when they fell. As Naruto lowered his hand, they screamed in pain and held their legs. He turned just in time to avoid getting his neck cut by a sword. He took a step back and looked at his opponent. "You must be the Hachibi Jinchuriki," he said. "I'm the powerful Bai, and I'm here to ruin your day." He blinked and looked at his notebook. He muttered, "Man, I must be getting worse," and then crossed that out. Naruto blinked. "Right. Well, if you don't want to fight, I'll be going," he said as he turned to leave, only to use his shield to block a slash. Kurabi said as he attacked with his sword, "You're not going anywhere. I'm going to make you pay for what you did tonight." Naruto used a block, and then he attacked back. Kurabi took a big step back and pulled out all of his swords. Face to face, Kurabi attacked with a whirlwind of steel. Naruto smiled because he was actually being challenged. He said, "You're very skilled," even though he was having trouble blocking all the attacks without his sword and shield. Kurabi suddenly flipped his sword a few times, changed his stance, and attacked by jumping and spinning to the side. Naruto wasn't ready for what happened, and one of the Hachibi's Jinchuriki cut his tabard. Naruto moved back and looked down. There was a diagonal cut on the tabard, but the chainmail was still in good shape. He looked up and snarled. He growled as he tightened his grip on his sword, "I like this tabard." He turned into a black blur, and Kurabi could barely block. He let out a gasp as his sword was cut in half. When Naruto attacked again, he looked up. He ran away. He said, "That sword is made of some strong steel. I don't want to know how it feels. Too bad, Naruto said as he slashed his way into the room. He cut Kurabi on the chest. The Kumo Jinchuriki jumped back and growled as he put his hand to the cut and jumped back. As it slowly healed, steam started to come out of it. He looked up as the chakra around him started to leak out. Guess it's time to get serious, he said as a pair of horns, a tail, and a reddish-brown chakra circled him. Naruto cursed to himself in his mind. I have to end this quickly. I don't want to tell you what Kyuubi's power is. He drew on just enough to give himself a boost, but not enough to make a cloak with tails. Instead, a ring of chakra the color of blood formed around him. Kurabi blinked. How are you? Do you think that's what it is? He asked his Biju. The Hachibi replied, I don't know, bye. That chakra feels like a Biju's, but it's mixed with something else, so I can't really tell. Naruto smiled as he held up a single gauntlet with claws. He yelled, Brisengiar. Fire. From the gauntlet, a ball of black flames shot at Kurabi. The Hachibi Jinchuriki jumped out of the way and landed on the side of a building. He shouted as lightning started to form around his swords, you'll have to be faster than that to beat me. He charged at the black-armored person. As they pushed against each other, their blades touched and sparks flew. As he tried to beat Kurabi, Naruto gave a low growl. He knew his sword was better made, and it showed as his blade slowly started to cut through Kurabi's, even though the lightning chakra was trying to keep it together. The Kumo shinobi also saw this, and he let out a growl. He tried to fight back, but that just made the sword he was blocking with take more damage. Before he fell back and kicked up, his eyes grew a little wider. Naruto wasn't expecting this move, so he was sent flying over Kurabi's head. At the same time, a big, muscled arm made of light chakra came out of nowhere and punched Naruto in the stomach. The famous demon dragon rider was thrown into the air and crashed into a few buildings. With the help of his older brother Kurabi slowly stood up. Thanks, bro. He did more than just show off. The Raikage said, right. He must be pretty tough if you're having trouble with him. Kurabi was about to say something when he heard a huge roar. They both turned around at the same time, and he was hit by a huge gust of wind that blew him through the buildings behind him. Kurabi was turned around by the wind's edge, and he fell to his knees. When he looked up, the black-armored figure was already coming toward them. He started to sweat when he saw those red eyes glowing through the holes in the helmet. As he got closer to Kurabi, he asked, do you really think one little blow will kill me? As more tails grew, Kurabi cursed to himself. But Naruto gave a snarl. He looked at Kurabi and said, I'm tired of this. Kurabi was about to attack when a sharp pain shot through his head. He hit the ground and grabbed his head. Wah. What was that? Naruto didn't move his eyes. That would be me, he said as the two of them were suddenly sucked into the darkness. Inside Kurabi's mind. Kurabi found himself in front of the cave in his mind where the Hachibi lived. He took a look. Wait, where am I? How did I get here? Ask him, said a rumbling voice in the cave as the bullhead of the Hachibi came out. Kurabi turned and stepped back when he saw the black-armored person standing in front of him. Quite an interesting place, he said, looking around before turning to Kurabi and Hachibi. But I don't have time to talk. I'm going to tell you straight. Kumo owes me for killing 2 Akatsuki members who were on their way to kidnap Yugito Ni and take the Nibi from her. So to pay off the debt your village owes me, you're going to tell your brother this. Kumo must withdraw from the war. One last thing, he said. If your village does join forces with Konoha, come find me. I think I can help you make your swords last longer and improve your rapping. Then he left. Real life. It had only been a second. I had pulled himself out of the rubble and was about to attack when the black helmet looked at him. That's enough. I'm done here. Your brother will get a message from me when he comes to. He turned and started to walk away. Hey, don't think you can just walk away. A yelled as he ran at the back of the person who was running away. As the Raikage threw a punch at Naruto, he turned to fight. But lightning shot straight at Naruto from his fist. The demon dragon rider used his sword to block, but he had to grit his teeth because some of the electricity still got to him. He swung his sword and yelled as he did so. He shouted, Atra Kaik Vaflaga. As he swung the sword, and the lightning shot back at the Raikage. The leader of Kumo quickly used a new jutsu to fight back. Lightning style, lightning armor jutsu. He shouted as lightning shot out of his body and absorbed the lightning that came back at him. Now that his lightning armor was on, he got ready to rush forward. But the huge wall of flames that grew between them stopped him in his tracks. As Naruto climbed on her back, Onyxia landed and growled at A. He shouted as Onyxia took off, "I'll expect a response to my offer in 48 hours. A yelled up to the sky as he fell to his knees. He looked up slowly. Kumo was burning. Not even a half hour ago, everything was calm and quiet. Then, out of nowhere, one man destroyed almost half of the city all by himself. As tears fell from his eyes, he growled. He felt a hand on his shoulder, and when he looked up, Kurabi was staring at him with a grim expression. He said, "We need to talk, big bro." Kakashi hid behind some of the stone trees and watched the fortress of Ishimori. The fortress had been taken for a day and a half. The Konoha shinobi got back together and started making small attacks against the Kumo. They did enough damage to the Kumo shinobi to bother them and hurt them, but not enough to get all of them to come out. He gently stretched his left arm, which was still sore from his fight with the Nibi Jinchuriki. As he did this, he saw a hawk fly from the north down toward the fortress. He let out a sigh and leaned back. I really hope this works. After about 10 minutes, there was a lot going on inside the fortress. The gates started to open, and the Kumo shinobi poured out. They turned around quickly and went north as fast as they could. Kakashi turned around and blinked before heading back to the Konoha camp. It was at the end of the secret passage out of Ishimori. It was hidden in a cave that was blocked by some petrified trees that had been carved into a kind of hidden doorway. He got there quickly and went straight to the center of the small camp. He said, "The Kumo shinobi are leaving." Guy nodded. "We know, my young rival. The Hokage got a letter from Kumo earlier. They're leaving the war because Oni destroyed their defenses and killed some of their shinobi. Hokage-sama is sending the regular garrison back and telling us to go home." Kakashi slowly nodded. So, the plan worked? It worked? Kakashi blinked as they nodded. Does anyone else think this is eerily similar to Minato Namikaze's attack on Tetsu Toride? During the Third Shinobi War, when Konoha was fighting Iwa, a strong fortress stood halfway between the border and Iwa itself. This was one of the biggest problems for Konoha. The walls of the fortress were made of iron that was 6 feet thick and could hardly be broken. There were seals on every surface that stopped chakra from flowing, so enemy shinobi couldn't use chakra to run up the 50-foot walls. The fortress was thought to be impossible to take over by an army of less than 20,000 people because it had a garrison of 1,000 shinobi, defensive weapon emplacements, and enough supplies to last for years. Minato Namikaze took down the fortress in 20 minutes. He used his still new Hiraishin technique and a shadow clone to throw the 3-pronged kunai over the walls. Everyone blinked. Kurenai finally asked, "What are you getting at, Kakashi?" After blinking, Kakashi shook his head. "Nothing," he said, turning away. "We should get going. Konoha." As Kushina left the Hokage's tower, she smiled. Tsunade had told her that her friend had done well at Kumo and would be back the next day. As she stepped out into the open, a figure in a cloak and an Anbu mask came into view. But the kanji for root was written on this mask. "Kushina-san, my master wants you to come with me," the voice said in a flat tone. When he showed up out of nowhere, Kushina blinked and growled. She said as she reached for her sword, You work for Danzo, don't you? I should gut you and then him." "That would be a bad idea, since Danzo knows things about your daughter," he said, seeing Kushina get nervous. She stiffened, then let out a growl. "What does he know about my daughter? She disappeared 19 years ago. How could he know anything about her? The root agent didn't do anything. He just turned around and asked, 'Will you come with me?'" Kushina took a breath and then went on. He took her to an empty training ground and went into the shadows right away. Danzo slowly hobbled out of another part. "Kushina Uzumaki," he said. She fixed it by growling, "Namikaze. What is this nonsense about you knowing about my daughter? If you're just wasting my time, I'll kill you right now." Danzo smirked. "Your threats are useless, Kushina-san, but I'm curious about what happened to you. I need to know if she really knows that I ordered her to be taken away." Kushina put her arms in a cross. "It has nothing to do with you. Now, what's the news? Or should I cut off your working limbs?" Danzo just took a file out of his pocket. "The day your daughter was taken, Orochimaru went on a mission to the north of Fire Country. Around the same time, a 1-year-old girl was left at the door of a local orphanage. He handed her a file. When she opened it, papers from the orphanage fell out. Danzo continued. 4 years later, she steals a flute and runs away. She's never seen again. Around the same time, Orochimaru leaves Konoha. 9 years later, during the Suna invasion, a girl who looks like your daughter and is around the same age is found helping Orochimaru attack the Sandaime. She then helped Orochimaru kidnap Sasuke Uchiha and was killed by Shikamaru Nara and Temari no Subaku. Kushina read all the information. So, that's it? You called me out here to give me this information? She asked as she slammed the file shut and glared angrily at him. The smirk on his face made her stand up straight. Of course not. I'm here to tell you where your daughter is and how to get her back, he said as he turned and walked away. Your daughter, Toya, ended up in the care of a civilian healer. For the past 6 years, she's been living in a town in the northern Fire Country. Until I sent my root agents to bring her here to Konoha. Kushina growled as she pulled out her sword. She's not here. Danzo smirked. Threatening me won't work. Only I know where your daughter is, and only I can tell you that. Killing me won't help you find your daughter, and if you give me to Tsunade, your daughter will die a slow and painful death. Kushina held her katana and then let out a sigh as she calmed down. She said, fine. What do you want? He turned to face him. It's simple. I want the demon dragon rider to help me. He will help me take control of Konoha so I can protect Konoha in the way I think is best. You can help me by getting the dragon rider to join my side. Kushina felt like she was split in two. She would never lie to him. But her daughter. Her grown-up little girl was on the line. She had to find a way to make this work for her. First, I need to see her. If you want me to agree, bring Toya here tomorrow night and show me. Then I'll decide whether or not to help you. Danzo blinked and growled. Are you really sure that you can make a deal? Kushina put her arms in a cross. I think so. What's to stop me from telling my friend in secret what's going on here? He could easily find you, get the information he wanted from you, save her, and then kill you. Now. Do we have an agreement? She asked calmly. Danzo gave her a dirty look and then put out his good hand. Deal. Kushina grabbed it, pulled him close, and whispered something in his ear. If she gets hurt in any way, you won't just have to worry about my revenge for having you take me, she said, turning and walking away. Danzo turned. It doesn't matter, Kushina. You'll help me whether you want to or not, he said, and then he walked away. The following morning. Onyxia landed in front of the Hokage's tower, and Naruto ran away. Before going in, he sighed and stretched. Even though the armor helped him stay alive, it wasn't something you'd want to sleep in. He quickly got to the Hokage's office and went in. Both Tsunade and Kushina were waiting there. Hokage-sama, he said, but his voice was all wrong. Oni, you did a great job out there. Kumo has already said it will leave the war, so our defenses in the north are safe for now, Tsunade said with a smile. Oni put his head down. Shall I give you a report, or do you not need one? Tsunade turned her head away. No, it's not complicated. As long as you didn't kill any civilians, which the Raikage didn't say you did, you're fine. Oni nodded, and he and Kushina left together. When they came out of the tower, Kushina leaned in close. We need to talk, because something important has come up. Naruto nodded. Right. As soon as they got to the Namikaze estate, Naruto took off his helmet, and Onyxia stuck her head through a window to hear what was being said. As Kushina sat down, she sighed. Danzo came to me last night and said he knew something about Toya, she said hesitantly. Naruto stiffened. He didn't say anything for a few minutes before he finally asked. What exactly did he say? He said, she sat down, that he would give her back to me if I helped him get you to work for him. I told him that I wanted to see her first. Naruto gave a growl. He actually has the guts to dangle her in front of you, that sick fuck, she said. Kushina nodded. Even more so since he's doing all of this because he has the wrong idea that only he can protect Konoha well. Naruto grew more angry. Either he's a big liar or he's crazy. When do you meet him to see Toya? She got up and walked over to where Onyxia was at the window. She sighed as she gently stroked the dragon's nose. Tonight at training ground 2. Will you be there early? Naruto moved up next to her and gave her a nod. Yes, and I'll find out where Danzo's hidden headquarters are. Kushina nodded. Just be careful, because last night I could feel several root agents in the trees around us. He nodded. Agreed. Onyxia, can you stay nearby to help? Onyxia gave a smirk. She asked innocently, great. Can I maybe catch and eat one of the root agents? Naruto made a funny face and shook his head. He said with a smile, not unless a fight breaks out. Onyxia looked like she was mad until Naruto told her he would get her a whole cow afterward. The black dragon smiled, licked her lips, and then licked him. Everyone was happy and laughed. Hinata practiced a kata with her mother's swords in another training area. She did this slowly and gracefully. The famous, blue demon, stopped and yawned. Lately, she had been having the same bad dreams every night. It kept waking her up in the middle of the night, and she had trouble falling back to sleep. She let out a soft growl as she thought about how these nightmares didn't start until he came. I think he's up to something with me. I have to talk to him. So how? She shook her head and went back to training, her movements looking like a graceful dance. That night at the training ground, Kushina waited for her turn on the training ground. Naruto hid nearby and waited for a chance to talk to Danzo or one of his goons to find out what was going on. She heard something move nearby, so she turned to her right and saw Danzo come out of the trees. Two of his root agents came up behind him and held up a figure in the middle. The figure looked like a woman because her clothes were torn and too big, and she was wearing a black bag over her head. Kushina saw right away that the legs of the figure didn't work. She stepped forward and asked, "What's wrong with her legs?" Danzo groaned. Her back was crippled during her fight with the Nara and Suna Kunoichi. The civilian who found her couldn't heal her fully, and after my own medic's examination, it seems that Tsunade would be the only one who could heal such long-term damage. Kushina gave a growl. How do I know this is her? You could have anyone under the bag and under the henge. Danzo snapped his fingers, and the bag came off, revealing a redhead with his mouth taped shut. Her eyes, which were blurry from the drugs, slowly looked up, and her brown eyes could be seen through her red bangs. Kushina's heart tightened as the young woman in front of her changed into the one-year-old girl who had smiled and clapped when she held her. She looked at Danzo and shook her head. She took a step forward and asked, "And how do I know it's not a henge?" Danzo smiled as he hit Toya's leg with his cane. The blow was hard enough to destroy a regular henge. In this case, the blow did not do anything except move Toya's leg. Kushina snarled when he was mad. She told him, "Bastard." Danzo just laughed more. "You asked, and I showed. This is your daughter, Kushina-san. So, do we have a deal? You help me get the demon dragon rider on my side, and I'll give you your precious daughter back. I'll even give you a chance to let Tsunade heal her before I make my move." Kushina muttered and then hung her head in defeat. She said quietly, "Fine." Danzo groaned. And this is why emotions are a ninja's worst enemy. See how easy it was for me to control you. It's pitiful, he spat as he turned away. I'll have one of my agents check in on you once a week to see how things are going, he said as he and his agents left. Kushina waited for a few minutes until she heard the sound of a small bird. Then, when Naruto showed up in his black clothes, she laughed. Well? I took the information I needed from one of the higher-ranking root shinobi around here, then changed his mind. From what I learned, Danzo's headquarters are under Konoha itself. But I couldn't find out anything about Toya, other than that she is kept somewhere there. He sighed softly as he looked in the direction they were going. I could send a clone to infiltrate, but if Danzo found out, it would cause too many problems. Kushina nodded. She said softly, "I know. Don't worry. Danzo won't get away with this." Naruto gave a grim smile. He turned toward the sky and said, "We should probably get out of here." Soon, Onyxia landed near them. She said with a smile, "Come. It's a beautiful night for flying." They both got on her back, and she took off into the sky. The day after. As Tsunade sat down at her desk, she sighed. Things were getting better for Konoha and Suna. Now that Kumo is gone, Konoha can send more shinobi to the border between Oto and Iwa. And when Kiri heard that the demon dragon rider had attacked Kumo, he cut off all diplomatic talks with Iwa and Kumo right away. Shizune came in just as she opened a bottle of sake and was about to drink. "Tsunade-sama, the fire daimyo wants you to know that he's coming to Konoha." Tsunade stood up. "What?" Shizune nodded. "Yes, he said that he wants to honor the brave warrior who fought against Kumo's power and won. He said that the message was sent just before he left, and he'll be here in 2 days." Tsunade went into action right away. "Call a meeting of the council to tell them this. Have Oni come to my office as soon as possible. Tell the villagers to get ready for the daimyo's arrival. Go." She shook a little as she went back to her desk. The last time the daimyo came, she had just told everyone that Naruto had died. He had scolded the whole village for being cruel to Naruto, for not being able to do what their greatest leader's dying wish was, and for not knowing the truth about Naruto. She took a seat. She said, "Well, this should be interesting," and then she drank the whole bottle of sake. 3 days later. People from Konoha and Shinobi were packed into the Chunin exam arena until there was no room to move. They were all there when the daimyo of the Land of Fire honored the demon dragon rider. The daimyo and his 4 guards stood in the middle of the arena. Each had a katana, a wakizashi, and a naginata. Their armor was also decorated. The daimyo himself stood tall and was armed with a katana, a wakizashi, and ceremonial armor. He had a strong build, a neatly trimmed beard and mustache, and long hair that was tied in a top knot for a ceremony. 1. Near him stood Tsunade, who was just there to show her appreciation for what the demon dragon rider had done. The daimyo turned his head a little and gave a nod to Tsunade, who was standing in front. "People of Konoha, we're here today to honor the service of the demon dragon rider, who went above and beyond what was expected of him. He took care of the Kumo threat all by himself and made sure they wouldn't come back against us in this war." Most of the crowd applauded and cheered, but it was mostly polite. In fact, most people still had a lot of fear of the armored figure. As people cheered, Oni walked through the arena's entrance and toward the daimyo and Tsunade. He stopped and bowed in front of them. He smiled and gave a small head nod. "I've heard that you just want to be called Oni. Is this true?" The armored person gave a nod. "That is right, Daimyo Dono." The daimyo nodded. Then, "Oni. In honor of your service to Konoha and Fire Country, I give you the Amulet of Fire. This is the highest honor that can be given to a shinobi, samurai, or civilian within the borders of Fire Country." An Anbu showed up and showed the daimyo what was inside the box he was holding. The daimyo took out a golden amulet that was shaped like a flame and hung from a red silk cord. The daimyo looked in Ona's direction. "Please take off your helmet so that we can all show you respect." When Oni looked at Tsunade, who had also stiffened but hadn't done anything to stop the daimyo, he stiffened up. Oni let out a soft sigh. "I'm sorry, Daimyo Dono, but I have to say no. I can't take off my helmet because my real name is important to me, and I won't let anyone here know it." Right away, everyone in the crowd started talking about it. Some of the older people were shocked, and some were even embarrassed. Refusing to show yourself to the most powerful person in the country was a big sign of disrespect. One of the guards moved forward as the daimyo stiffened and was about to say something. He shouted as he readied his naginata, "You disrespectful peasant. How dare you insult Daimyo-sama? I will cut off your head for this." Oni moved back right away. "Daimyo Dono, I don't mean to be rude. I just don't want the people of this village to know who I am." The daimyo put up his hand, and his samurai guards loosened up a little. "I know you're worried, Oni, but you've hurt my honor, even if it wasn't on purpose. I can't just kill you, though, because you're a hero and we need your skills. But my honor and that of my guard need to be answered to, so I'm afraid you'll have to duel him. Not to the death, but until one of you gives up." Oni blinked, before sighing. "I understand, Daimyo Dono, and accept this. Let me get my weapons, and we'll fight." He turned back to the entrance and soon came back with his sword sheathed at his side and his teardrop shield on his left arm. The Anbu, the daimyo, and the other 3 samurai all moved back, as did Tsunade. As the samurai who had yelled at Oni moved forward with his naginata at the ready, he continued to shout at him. Oni pulled out his sword and held it close to his side, pointing out and down. He showed his shield, which had a curled dragon on it. The dragon's tail was down toward the point, its head was curled back at the curve, and silver flames were coming out of its mouth. They both looked at each other and then, for some reason we don't know, they both charged. The samurai spun his naginata, swinging it down at Oni. He put up his shield as a shield and moved under it. The samurai blocked Ona's attack with the shaft of his weapon, then swung it around and stabbed him with the point. He pushed it to the side and pushed the samurai back with his shield. The samurai fell backwards, got back on his feet, and turned his weapon so that it was pointing down. He gave Oni a blink, but he just went back to his old position. He growled and moved forward, spinning the naginata around him and then slashing quickly at Ona's side. The demon dragon rider blocked and then counter-slashed, cutting the samurai's chestplate. He moved back, put his hand on his chestplate, and gave Oni a mean look. Oni held up his sword and made a "come and get me" sign with his hand. As he charged, the samurai yelled out his challenge, and he kept attacking by spinning, stabbing, slashing, and jabbing. Oni used his shield and sword to block and parry, but he was slowly being pushed back. Some of his movements were limited by his chainmail armor, which made it harder for him to move. This was clear when one cut went through. The naginata cut his tabard and rubbed against his chainmail, but it didn't do any damage to either. Oni used that time to hit the samurai with a stronger shield smash, which put him on his back. As the samurai got down on his knees, he looked up and checked his chest. He moved forward and cut down. The samurai tried to defend himself by raising his naginata, but Naruto's sword cut right through it, and Naruto kicked him in the back. The 3 claws made 3 shallow cuts in the chestplate, but they were not deep enough to hurt. The samurai rolled to his feet and pulled out his katana just in time to block another side slash. The katana quickly went for Ona's neck, but the armored warrior leaned back to avoid it. He turned around to avoid the cut, then stabbed the samurai, who jumped back. Oni followed and slashed with his sword from high right to low left, swinging it around his head. The samurai tried to block, but the blow to his katana was so strong that it knocked him over. He stumbled back and then jumped to the side to avoid a downward cut. He took the chance to cut at Ona's left bicep, which had just opened up. There, the katana got a good grip on the chainmail and cut a few of the links, digging in. Right away, Naruto swung his shield and pushed the samurai away. He then did a spinning slash, which the samurai dodged, and hit him in the back, where he wasn't protected. Naruto rolled forward, turned, and used his own sword to block a downward slash. He stood up, knocked the sword away, and swung his shield so that it hit the samurai on the side of the head. Then he jumped and kicked him in the chest with both feet. The blows to the head and chest knocked the samurai back, and he fell to the ground out of breath and confused. When he finally came to himself, the blade of Ona's sword was at his neck. He asked in a simple way, "Do you give in?" The samurai looked up at him and then put his back down. Yes. Oni put his sword away and reached out to help the samurai. The samurai took it, and Oni helped them stand back up. Oni said, "You're an excellent fighter." The samurai nodded silently and turned to bow to the daimyo, who had returned with his other guards and Tsunade. He said, "Please forgive me. I have let you down." The daimyo put a hand on the warrior's head to make him feel better. "It's okay. You did your best, and that's enough for me," he told Oni, who bowed his head. "Oni, I see now that your reputation is well deserved, but I'm curious why you won't tell anyone who you are." Oni got a little stiff, then loosened up. "If it's okay with you, I could tell you why in a safe place. You can have your guards with you, but no one from Konoha can be there, and they have to swear not to tell anyone what I say." He blinked and then nodded. "Fine. Tsunade-san, can we use one of your locked rooms, and have you promised no one will listen?" This made Tsunade feel torn. On one hand, she didn't want to give up this chance and let only the daimyo's guards protect him. She couldn't say no to his request, though. She nodded. "Of course, but just to be safe, I'd like to put a pair of junin outside the room." The Oni and daimyo both gave a nod. "Okay, let's go," he asked Oni. After half an hour, the daimyo, Oni, and the 4 samurai were in a safe room together. Outside, Kakashi Hatake and Hinata Hyuga stood guard. Oni looked at the daimyo from inside the room. "I'm sorry for the trouble I caused, Daimyo Dono, but the truth is that if anyone found out who I am, it would cause me and those close to me a lot of trouble." The daimyo nodded. "I get it, and you have my word that neither I nor anyone else in this room will tell anyone who you are." Oni nodded, then reached up and undid his helmet strap. He slowly grabbed it and got ready to take it off his head. Hinata Hyuga was fuming quietly outside the room. The person inside had been making her mad lately, and now he was revealing his true identity, but she didn't know who he was. Or did she? She looked at Kakashi, who was looking down the hall. It would only be for a moment, and the Daimyo was in there, so he might need protection. She turned on her Byakugan quietly. From where Kakashi was standing, he couldn't see her bulging veins or changes in her eyes unless he asked her to look at him. She smiled behind her mask as she watched Oni reach for his helmet and slowly start to take it off his head. Her smile stopped when she saw something she never expected to see again and only saw in her dreams. She felt ice flow through her body, and her Byakugan turned off right away. She stood there, unable to understand what she had just seen. Kakashi looked at her and saw that she was stiff. "Hinata? You okay?" She answered automatically, "I'm fine." Her voice sounded mechanical, but Kakashi just put it down to how she was feeling at the time. Hinata just stood there, her mind and heart racing with thoughts and feelings like anger, fear, confusion, unbelievable joy, and most of all, love. I don't think so, Naruto. About a half hour later, the Daimyo, his guards, and Oni left the room. The Daimyo nodded to Kakashi and Hinata, then shook Ona's hand and said, "I understand now. Thank you for putting this information in my hands. Here's what you've won." He gave Oni the amulet and told her to wear it with pride. Oni took it and bowed. "Daimyo Dono, you do me a lot of honor." "Thank you." The Daimyo and his guards then went to see Tsunade, and Naruto just nodded at Kakashi and Hinata and left. Kakashi sighed. "Well," he said, "that's the end of it," and walked away. Hinata didn't move a muscle as she watched the armored figure walk down the hall until it was gone. Slowly, she started to walk, but her mind didn't care where her body was going. "Naruto," she said in a whisper, "you're alive. South of Konoha, in a town." Jiraiya, the great Toad Sanin and author of the Icha Icha series, stumbled into his hotel room so drunk he couldn't believe it. This was something he did every day. He would contact his spy network, maybe half-heartedly peep on some women, and then spend the rest of the day getting drunk and falling asleep in whichever hotel room he was staying in. He closed his eyes and let his drunken stupor put him to sleep, but tonight wouldn't be a normal sleep without dreams. Jiraiya's dream. Jiraiya found himself in a fight with the Yondaime, someone he had never expected to fight and didn't want to fight. "Minato. What's happening?" he asked as he blocked Minato's kunai attack. The blonde Hokage just growled. "Don't you act surprised, sensei. You left my son alone. Your godson." The yellow flash roared as he slammed a Rasengan at Jiraiya. The Toad Sage jumped away. "Minato, you don't get it, do you? He would never have been safe with me on the road. I wanted to stay with him and take care of him, but Sarutobi wouldn't let me. He said that my spy network was too important to Konoha, and that if I took care of Naruto, countries that hated you might get suspicious and go after Naruto. He begged, but all he got was a hard punch to the gut and a knee to the face. He went flying, but Minato caught him and slammed him into the ground. You know that's a load of crap. After the Third Shinobi War, Iwa was too weak to attack us, and Kumo respected me enough not to go after any of my children. Didn't I tell you that Naruto's main enemies would be inside the village, not outside? But you couldn't understand that with that sick mind of yours, could you?" He lifted Jiraiya into the air and made a Rasengan in one hand. "I should use this to tear you in half," he said. "I really want to, but only if you do everything I say. Got it?" Minato grunted, "Good," and Jiraiya nodded. "Now, pay attention to me. You will go back home to Konoha. You'll go to my house, where my wife is. You will get down on your knees in front of her and beg her to forgive you for leaving our son when he needed you the most. If she agrees, perhaps. At least in my eyes, you'll have a chance to make things right. Do you understand?" Jiraiya nodded. "I understand. I will do that. I'll do anything to fix what I've done." Minato put him on the ground. "Good," he said. "Remember, old man. Or else the Shinigami will feel sorry for you when I'm done with you." With that, he gave Jiraiya one more punch, which knocked the Toad Sage on his behind, and then he left. Real life. Jiraiya's eyes popped open, and as he sat up, he gasped for air and started to gag. He ran into the bathroom and threw up in the toilet. When he was done, he lay there gasping for air and slowly looked up at the ceiling, as if he were looking to heaven. I will. Minato. He whispered, I will earn your trust back, and Kushina's as well, and then ran back. He had a long way to go.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.